Okay, this video is going to cover kind of prepping our sheets and getting everything ready to go into Paperspace. One thing just of note before we get started is that I'm not going to show placing every single floor plan onto the sheets. I'm going to show the process for how I would go about doing it with probably just like my level 1 floor plan and my level 2 floor plan. But just keep in mind that the same process would be used for doing things like our foundation plan and our framing plan and our level 3 plan. And since the process is a little repetitive, I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, not do that in this video. But before I would go to put everything on my sheets, what I'd want to do is go into, say, like my level 1 floor plan, and I would want to double check based on the PDF file that I have everything that is provided in this level 1 floor plan in my plan as well. So things like our wall sections, our additional section view, every single one of our dimension strings that is shown here in this plan should be provided along with your drawings. All of the leaders and annotations that are here should also be provided in your drawings. And while I do not have all of that in this set of documents, just keep in mind that you should have all of those. And I highly recommend having the PDF file open on another screen so that this way you can just double check your Revit work based off of the work that's in here. So before I go to put anything on a sheet, what I always like to do in here within kind of my drawing space is I like to turn on a crop region just to double check that everything's going to fit when I have the view cropped, and then maybe fix anything that might have gotten a little bit askew when I crop the drawing. So for instance, this section head all of a sudden became really tiny when I cropped it. So I'm just going to drag it out to be back in line here. Same thing with this tail. I'll drag this one up to be in line. And just if there's anything I sort of need to hide, I might hide it in this plan. I don't have anything that I need to hide other than the crop region. But in some of like our foundation plans and our framing plans, there might be features that we just want to hide from that view to just temporarily get rid of them. So once I have everything in that crop region the way I want it to look, I'm going to click on hide crop region so that way that box isn't going to appear when I go put it into Paperspace. To put this view onto a sheet, what I'm going to do is scroll down in my project browser until I find sheets, and then I'm going to right click on sheets and say I want to create a new one. I'm going to do this based off of this size D. This is a different kind of title block set up from our template file. So it has just a little bit of a different stylized one than the one that came in just default Revit. We're not going to have to change any of the information up here. There are a few different labels or parameters down here that we'll have to update. So things like our name, keep in mind that you should be lettering these things. So that's just hitting caps lock on your keyboard. You're going to put your name in there. This is going to travel through with every single one of the sheets you create. The date as well, and keep in mind the date that I have on here could be very different than the date that you are going to be using depending on when you watch this video. And this scale of the draw, which the scale is actually a parameter that's going to fill in automatically once we place views onto our sheets. Our sheet title, so for this one, I'm going to call it my level 01 floor plan. I meant to put a dash there, not an equal sign. And then our sheet ID, for this sheet, it's going to be A101 because a floor plan is architectural. The 100 means it's a plan, and it's our first floor. Now, before I put a view on this sheet, one thing that I really like to use is called a guide grid. They just kind of help me make sure that all of my views are going to go kind of knocked into the same corner for all of the plans. So to turn my guide grid on or to load one in, I'm just going to go to the View tab up at the top, and in my sheet composition, I'm going to say, please put in a guide grid. I'm just going to either create a new one. In my case, I already have one loaded into this project, so I'll say use existing. You can click on create new, and this just puts this box in here. So now, to place my level 1 floor plan on here, what I'm going to do is drag and drop it from my floor plans in the project browser, and then click to place it in my view. What I'm going to do next is kind of move based on this grid point just onto my guide grid. So I'm going to have all of my floor plans kind of sit in line here. I can count up as well. Sometimes what I do is, here's my title block. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'll say I want to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so this corner is where I'm going to put that grid. What I'm going to do is just click once on this viewport, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys to knock it close to the place I want to put it, just so I don't lose that. And then I'm going to scroll to zoom in, and I'm going to use the move command up here to move it from this point to sit on that point. So that's just going to make it so that way my foundation plan, or rather my floor plan in this case, is right on that corner. I'll click off of it to get off of the view, and then I'm going to scroll down in my sheet properties to just turn this guide grid off and move myself off of here. I'm also going to move my title here up a little bit. So I'm going to keep it where my title is kind of in line with those pieces there. To shorten that title, I'm going to click on the view once, and then I'll be able to shorten that name. And again, I'm going to kind of keep it in line here. I could also turn the guide grid back on to do this and keep it nice and organized. But using that grid is just going to let me kind of establish a shared point between all of my pieces. So next I'll do a sheet for my level 2 floor plan. So I'm going to right click on sheets, say I want to create a new sheet, base it off of this same title block. It already numbered it, sheet 102. It's going to just keep using the same theme until eventually you have to rename it. And then I'm going to call this one level 02 floor plan. I'll go into my level 2 floor plan. Again, what you want to do is double check that you have all of your views placed, you have all of your dimensions placed, you have all of your annotations placed. So I recommend that in the PDF file, you look at everything that is labeled and placed within the level 2 plan and make sure that you have all of that same information. So for mine, what I'm going to do before I even or I'll do it after I crop it. Sorry, I forgot words for a moment. I'm going to view my crop region, because that actually kind of fixed all of this stuff with my heads for some reason. I was going to have to start flipping some things around, but that actually fixed it. So good for me. Then I don't have to change all of that stuff. I like how kind of tight this one is, so I'm just going to leave it alone and hide my crop region. And then to put this on my level 2 floor plan, I'm going to go into the sheet by double clicking. I'm going to turn the guide grid on. I can do that by either clicking up here in the view tab, make sure I'm still in view. I could come up here, or I could scroll down in my properties bar and I could say I want guide grid number 1. And then in my project browser, I'm going to scroll up until I find level 2, drag it, drop it in. I remember that my number 6 line was in line with the date, so I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the corner I base everything off of. And then I'm going to click on the view just once, and I'm going to use my arrows to nudge that close to it. And then I'm going to use the move tool here to grab it by that intersection, put it on that intersection. That way they just all kind of have that shared spot. While the guide grid's still on, I can also click off of the view, move this into place. So if I want it sitting where my view title is like in line on this grid and kind of flush with where these are, and if I want to end the line, I have to click on the view once. That then gives me this grip to move this line. Unfortunately, we cannot move the title based on the guide grid. If I go to use this move tool, it won't let me actually kind of pick it up based off of the grid to move it, which is kind of annoying. I wish it would, because that would be wonderful. And then what I always like to do is at the very end, I come to this guide grid option all the way at the bottom of the sheets, and I say I'd like no guide grid on. So this way I can just kind of have all of the views organized. So I would do the same thing in all of my floor plans. Is I'm just going to double click in the view, double check that everything is going to fit within my crop region, double check that everything is nice and like organized. So for instance, I might want to move this one down and this one up. Make sure that I have all of my dimensions and all of my annotations. The one I'm showing right now in this video does not have all of the annotations and dimensions in it. So your drawing is going to have to match. I scroll up. This guy, not necessarily what you're seeing on my Revit screen at the moment. Once you have everything in here good to go, you're going to hide your crop region so that way it's not going to show up in the drawings, though we can get rid of it after the fact if we need to. So that same process I showed with the level 1 and level 2, you'll do that with all 5 of these views, on each one of them on its own sheet. Now for our elevations, we're going to have a slightly different kind of way that we're going to work with our elevations. So I'm going to look at my east elevation because all 4 of these are going to go on the one sheet together. So we have a little bit of a different method that we're going to work with here. With our east elevation, one thing to note as well is that it has several dimensions and annotations that are going to get included on it. All 4 of the views do not need all of those dimensions. Once we put those dimensions on one, we can kind of just reuse them on each one of them. And then we also have a stylized view here in the south elevation. So I'm going to approach cropping these a little bit different to try to keep them as organized as I possibly can. But there is going to be a little bit of things being off. You might be able to notice here, but and I don't know if this pen tool, no, that makes me sign my name. That's not a normal pen. Well, it has this line here. Can I make that line vertical? I'm just going to close out of this because I don't know how to use it. I was hoping that it was just going to let me draw a line straight down. These aren't perfectly lined up. Thankfully, that line kind of straightened it. They look pretty lined up. The same thing here with these levels is that if I have a level that goes from, let me use the highlighter, please. I don't want to highlight that text. I just want to draw a line. From here straight up, these are ever so slightly like off. I tried to eyeball them as much as possible, but I'm not perfect on here, but we sort of can't tell. These ones are lined up because they were a little bit easier to work with in it. So here I am in my east elevation. I would want to make sure that I would add in all of my necessary annotations. I also have, from a previous demo, I have hidden quite a few things in this view. So if I turn on Reveal Hidden Elements, we can see that I have some of my levels are hidden from this view because I just don't want those spot elevations coming up. And also I have these 2 sections hidden in this view and within here. What I want to do to prep this for paper, though, is to crop it. So I'm going to show my crop region. And what I do in these views to keep them a little bit more organized is I actually click on the region itself and I use this size crop tool. And so I'm going to set the size crop to 10 inches wide. And then really what I usually do is just a 10 by 8. And I hit apply. And I see if that size is going to work or not work on here. After I apply a size that's going to fit like width-wise, so I could try like 9. 9 brings in it a little too much. It's taking that part off. So I think 10 will work just fine. And then I'm going to click OK. And what I usually do as well is I take this bottom line and I drag it up to whatever my foundation level is. So that way all of my views are going to have the same height here for this bottom part, rather than just kind of dragging it randomly. Once I have this view kind of ready and set to go, I'm going to actually leave the crop for the time being because I want to check it against my north and my south and my west. So I'm going to go into my north view. I have a few things that I need to hide here in my north. So I'm going to like right click, hide and view element, right click, hide and view element. For these, I'm going to right click, hide and view category, so I can just get rid of all of them. And then I'm going to show my crop region, click on the crop region once, and say that I want to crop the size. And for this one, I'm going to do 12 by 8 and hit apply. So 12 inches brings it in pretty well. Let's try if I can do 11. I kind of liked 12. And keep in mind, this is just how big it's going to be on the paper. Our paper itself is 3 feet by 24 inches, so we have enough room for this, even with our title block. And so I'll click OK, and then I'm just going to drag that bottom to go up with my line here. I'm going to leave the crop region on for a moment. I'll go into my south view, do my same kind of cleanup of hiding the category of my sections, hiding the category of, whoops, let me control Z because I want to hide the element, not the category. Hide element, hide element. I was getting a little ahead of myself. Then I'm going to show my crop region, click on it once, size crop, and use the same size as what I used in the other, which was 12 by 8. Apply, OK. I'm going to drag my bottom crop up to level 0. And then in this one, I'm also going to turn shadows on. Currently, shadows are turned off. So if I click here, shadows will be on. And that just kind of stylizes this view a little more. It's the only one of these elevations that we do have those shadows turned on. Lastly, I'm going to prep my west elevation. So I'll go into my west. I'm going to hide and view category, hide and view element, hide and view element, and then show my crop region, click on it, size crop it to be 10, really 10 by 8 is what I went with, but then drag this down. I just had already done a little prep work in here. The height isn't going to be too important. What I want to adjust a little bit, and this is going to be something I also do a little on the fly within the paper space, is I'm going to click on the crop region and I'm going to kind of use my arrow keys to nudge it towards one side or another. And you'll sort of see why once we're on the piece of paper. So now I have all 4 of these cropped to size. What I'm going to do is create a new sheet. So I'm going to right click on sheets and say new. Base it off of the size D. And for my title, I'm going to call it Exterior Elevations. And for my sheet number, this is going to be sheet A201. I'm going to place my south elevation and my east elevation first, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball them into place down here. Since I'm doing 4 views, I don't have to be as precise as I was doing with the floor plans here. So I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to go south, drag it, and drop it into place. And then I'm going to go into my east and drag it and drop it into place. And you'll notice that before I click, it's showing me that these 2 views height-wise are lined up, which is great. I'm going to click on the south. I'm going to move it over slightly, just so I kind of have a little bit of enough room. I'm going to put my north one in. So I'll go north, drag it. And since I have these crop regions at the same width, the titles will also be the same. So when I go to place the north, it's actually, if I click on it and I use my arrow keys, see how it's nice and perfectly lined up there? That's exactly kind of what I want it to look like, so that this way I can understand the correlation between these 2. I'll go to do my west and I'll drag it and drop it. And with my west view, we're going to have a little bit of the building not fitting with that perfect kind of flip because of the stairwell here and the fact that it's taking up a little bit more room on that grid. So while our grid is perfectly matched up here, what I've done in this drawing doesn't have that grid matched up. So instead, what I'm going to do in Revit is, while I have these 4 views placed, is I'm going to try to double click on my west view to activate it, click on my crop region, and then use my arrow keys to sort of nudge the building over a little bit to the right. What I'm trying to do here is just kind of eyeball that as best as possible into sort of being in line or flush here. But it isn't going to be 100% perfect. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get it to be perfect. Once I have it placed kind of the way I want, then I'm going to hide the crop region and double click out of that view. I'll go into my east view, double click to activate it, hide its crop region, double click off. Double click into the south, hide the crop region, double click off. Double click into the north, hide the crop region, double click off. And so this has kind of allowed me to organize them a bit, but not necessarily keep everything super perfectly in line. There is no way that I know of, at least, to have this sit nice and flush in here without me just kind of eyeballing everything into place. So that's my best bet that I have for it, unfortunately. Same thing with our building sections. So we'd have to go into our building sections. These ones have crop regions on automatically, so we can move those in and turn them off as well. With these, do I have those lined up? I don't think so. I was like, actually, no, I do have them lined up because it is looking towards the same direction. That was a stupid question of me. They're just cut in different spots. Is one thing to keep in mind is that you have everything hidden that you need to hide, and that you also have added all of the different annotations. So particularly in this view here, we have those measurements for our heights, for the height of our ceiling, for this knee wall height, and all of these annotations related to the different materials. So in Revit, I'm going to hide anything that I do not need or want in the view. I didn't mean to do hide category, so I'll do Control Z, hide in view element, hide in view element. And then I also want to double check that I have everything joined in the section view. So in this view, I do not. And so I'm going to click on the foundation, join geometry, footing to foundation, foundation to wall, foundation to floor, floor to wall, and just make that all one piece. I do have the roof joined up here though. And I do have some of this side joined, so I'll do footing to foundation. And then I'm going to click on my crop region, size my crop, and change my width to around 12. And I'll do a height of, let's try 8. Let's do 7. Let's try 7. We could probably even maybe do a little less, but I'll leave it at 7. That'll be fine. We do want to keep a little bit more exposed down here for the foundation. And so at this point, this view ready to go. I'll work my way down into this one. Again, I want to double check that everything is joined around my building, that all of my connections are being made. I need to connect this here, so I'll go join. This is a pretty small one, but I've got everything connected here. This, I need to actually bring my wall up, so I'm going to hit escape, click on my foundation wall, attach top to base, click on this wall, and then I need to go into my modify tab, join, foundation to wall, wall to floor, floor to foundation, join all that up. Do my hiding, so right click, hide in view category, right click, hide in view element, right click, hide in view element, and then click on the crop region itself, size crop, and I did a width of 7 and a height, or a width of 12 and a height of 7, excuse me. This is just going to help ensure that when I put these two buildings on top of each other on the sheet, they're going to line up really nicely together. So then I'm going to hide my crop region. I also need to go back into my view number 1 and hide it. I'll go into my north-south section, do my same bit here of hiding the elements and categories that I do not need or want to show up in my view. So this is just right click, hide, double check that everything is joined. So I have a few joins I need to do. So I'm just joining all that together. This probably also needs to get joined here. Join that. Join that. This side's already joined, and that side's already joined. So I'm just double checking my view. Again, I would want to make sure I have all of those annotations I might need in this particular view. And then I'm going to hit escape a bunch of times, click on my crop, size it. Let's try, if I do a width of 10, apply. That seems good. And then I'll do a height of 7, so that way it's having that same height across all 4 of them. I'll click OK, and then I'm going to hide my crop. I'll go into this north-south view and do my same bit of hide in view, hide in view, hide in view, double check all of my joins. So I've got some missing here. Join, wall to foundation, foundation to floor, floor to wall, footing to wall, this wall to this one, floor to this one, this ceiling, or this roof rather, to this wall. Just double checking all those joins. And I believe we are set then. And so now I've got to adjust my crop region. I'll hit escape several times. Click on the box, size crop. I believe I did 10 by 7. And then OK. And then I'll hide my crop region. So now I'm ready to make a new sheet. I'm just going to collapse these into each other. And I'm going to right click on sheets, new sheet. I'm going to rename this sheet to be building sections. And then for the sheet ID, this one's going to be A301. These I have just memorized because that's what you kind of have to do when you're working with architecture stuff, is memorize your sheet IDs. But again, you can also just reference what is listed in here for what you need to create. And then I'm going to start placing my views. So in Revit, I'm just going to place my east-west section number 1, plop it down, and my east-west number 2, I'm going to put it right on top. And I do want to make sure that they're lining up with that little dot dot in the center, because that's making sure that they're on that same grid. I'll do my northwest number 1 and my northwest number 2 of dragging and dropping. And so that's just ensuring that I'm on that grid. I might want to move these two over. So I'm going to click on one, hold control, click on the other. So I can move both of those over just to give a little bit more room for these two. And I might want to even hold control and click on both of those. And just like scoot them 1 or 2 over. They were a little close to the title block. I would do the exact same thing then to do my sheets for my foundation plan, my wall sections, my framing plan, and my roof for my level 3 plan. But we're not going to do all of those sheets in this video just for the sake of time. But it's the exact same process of cropping your view, hiding the things you don't want in it, and then copying and or dragging and dropping it onto a sheet. For our cover sheet here, we will go over that in this video though, is we have 3 3D views, all of actually from the same camera. They're just duplicates with a little bit changed in each one of them. And then of course a rendering, and then a text box for our index. So there should be in your 3D views a 3D view already placed of a camera of 3D1. Mine's a little bit off kilter, so I'm just going to drag this crop box around to change it. Though if you don't have a 3D1 view in here, what you can easily do is go like into, let's say, our site plan, and then we're just going to create a new camera. So I'm just going to do a camera. So click on this little arrow next to our 3D camera. We'll place it over here looking towards the building, and then you can make some adjustments to your crop. If it's not identical to the 3D views that I've made, it'll be okay. Because even then I kind of eyeballed that into being pretty much the same. In fact, I'm even going to delete my 3D one and use this new one. We are going to want to create 3 versions of this drawing, or 3 versions of this 3D view. One being a wireframe model. So in Revit, I'm going to turn this into a visual style of a wireframe. And then I'm going to turn off the crop region. And then what I'm going to do is right click on this view, duplicate it, and then duplicate. So this has made a copy of it. Now I can make this one into just a plain hidden line view and keep this wireframe view. So I'm going to right click on the wireframe, rename, and call it wireframe. So that way I know what it is when I go to place it. In this view here, what we are going to do is we're going to turn shadows on. So the easier way to kind of do that also with our ambient shadows is we're going to go into our graphic display options right here. And we are going to go into our shadows, and we're going to turn shadows on, but we're also going to have ambient shadows. So cast ambient shadows for it. And this is going to stylize this one a little more. What I also like to do, and I know it looks different than the one that's on the, not that in here, on here, but just go with me here because I think it's going to look better. Or should we just do just ambient shadows like that? I don't know. I like mine better. So we're going to do that with the ambient shadows. Is I am going to turn a background on, and I'm going to put a gradient background in. So what I like to do here is usually pick kind of like a little bit of a darkerish blue with blue, and we'll knock that down. Maybe let's try with a big navy one. And let's hit apply and see if we like that. Maybe I do want it a little bit more cyan. So I usually kind of just sit and play with this color until I get something that I kind of like to make a little bit more of a stylized view, but not necessarily a rendering. And I'm going to rename this one my hidden line view. And then we're going to make one more duplicate. We're going to make a realistic looking view. Keep in mind, this is going to take a little while to load. And we also should probably do a render of this as well, just to kind of keep in mind of how to place a render onto a sheet. So to render this view, I'm going to go into View, and I'm going to use the render option just that's right in Revit. For my settings, we'll want to do like a high one. We'll leave our sky and our lighting scheme completely alone. So then I'm going to click render, and wait for it to finish processing the render. And so keep in mind, this is going to take a small amount of time. And once your render is finished, in order to actually save it to be able to put it onto a sheet, you need to click on Save to Project. And then I'm going to save it as render. So now I have 3 different views that I can put into my drawing, and I can actually get rid of this hidden line copy. I can right click and I can delete it. So I've got this view, I've got my wireframe view, and I also have my render here, all 3 of these to place onto a new sheet. So I'm going to right click on sheets here and say I want to make a new sheet and say okay. I'm going to call this sheet G for general 000. For my title, it's going to be cover sheet. And when I go to place views on this sheet, I have to kind of deal with them or just change one little setting compared to the other ones. So I'm first going to add the render onto here and just drag it and drop it. And one thing that comes in is this title here. I cannot get rid of this title necessarily by like deleting it. I also can't hide it in the view. But what I can do is this. I can go into my viewports and click on Edit Type, duplicate it, and make a new viewport called No Name. And then when it says have a title, I'll just say no. Don't have a title, don't have a line, don't do that, like have none of that. Just absolutely, just no, 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 no. And I'll click OK. And now this viewport doesn't have a name or a title associated with it. I have to make sure I do that edit type and duplicate it, because otherwise what I've done is I've deleted all of these titles off of here. So I have my render. I'm just going to place it over here to the side. I'm also then going to drag and drop my hidden line view, drag it, drop it in, change it to a no name viewport. I think, did I not turn the crop region off on this? No, I did. It's going to be, I don't know if I could do a guide grid. Can I do a guide grid with these? I'm going to try. If I do guide grid, I don't think it will work. So I'm going to click on this view, move it. No, see, it won't let me snap to anything here. I could still use the guide grid though to maybe eyeball these. So that way the edge is all sitting kind of flush on one particular piece. But unfortunately, I can't grab it by any part in order to keep those in line. And then I'm also going to drag and drop my wireframe on top of it. And I'm also going to change this one to be a no name viewport. And then click off of it, scroll down on this sheet and say I don't want a guide grid. So that way I have each of these 3 views for it. And then to put in my index, that's just going to be a text box. So I'm going to go into the Annotate tab. There is text right here. And I'm going to just make a text box. I can actually probably change my text size to be the 1/4 inch. And then say I want a text box. And I'll say index to drawings. S101 foundation plan. S102 framing plan. A101 level 1 floor plan. So really what I should be doing is looking at this here. Whoops. Or I could even highlight the whole thing. Control C to copy. Go into Revit. Control V to, whoops, I guess I didn't copy. Did I not? Oh no, I highlighted it. I'm in the highlight tool. Can I get rid of that highlight? Control C to copy it. Go into Revit. Control V to paste. It even bolded that first one for me. That's pretty cool. And I'm just going to use the tab key to move these ones over a little bit. Tab. So I'm just doing like a double tab just to put some extra space in here. I'm going to move it to sit in line with my drawings. Again, the guide grid, from my understanding, isn't going to work with something like this, but I can just use my arrow keys to kind of move it up and down and just kind of make a little bit of an adjustment. And then I'd have my cover page set to go. Unfortunately, the print to PDF option doesn't work within the computer labs, so I'm not going to ask you to print this out as a PDF file, but instead, when you submit your work, I'll be able to look at all of your sheets here. And as a final reminder, these sheets that I've gone over in the video are not the only sheets you need. You're going to need two structural sheets for your foundation and your framing. You're also going to need a floor plan sheet for your level 3, and you're going to need your wall section sheet as well, but I just did not do those in this video. But at this point, you would be ready to, or once you rather have all of your views done, you're ready to save and submit your work.